The first time I saw Emily, she was standing on her porch with a paint roller in one hand and a baby monitor clipped to her jeans. The sun was sliding down behind the row of old houses, turning everything copper, and she looked over at me with this half-smile, like she already knew something about me I hadn't told anyone. It wasn't attraction, and it wasn't anything romantic. It was something else, something I didn't recognize at first because I hadn't seen it directed at me in years. It was kindness, plain, simple, and disarming. And for a 32-year-old single dad who'd been running on empty for so long he forgot what softness felt like, that kind of kindness can be terrifying. I would learn that unexpected kindness is sometimes the hardest thing to accept, especially when it shows up in the form of a neighbor who says, "If you want to look, just ask," and means something far deeper than the words suggest. Before I get into the full story, I want to thank you all for being here. If you enjoy heartfelt, real-life stories about compassion, second chances, and the small miracles happening around us every day, make sure you subscribe to Truthlines USA. Give this video a like, leave a comment sharing a moment of kindness in your own life, and join our community of listeners who believe in the good that still exists in the world. When my wife left, she didn't leave a note. She didn't leave a forwarding address or a new number. She left me with our 2-year-old son, a pile of bills, and a hollow in my chest that felt bottomless. For the first few months, I lived in survival mode: work, daycare pickup, microwave dinners, bedtime battles, repeat. I didn't have friends anymore. Most had drifted away during the rough patches of my marriage, and the ones who stuck around didn't know how to talk to a man whose life had caved in overnight. The only adult voice I heard most days was the drive-through worker asking if I needed ketchup. So when Emily moved into the house next door, I barely noticed. I had no room in my brain for anything except keeping my son alive and trying not to fall apart. But she noticed me. One evening, as I was wrestling a giant trash bag into the bin, I saw her watching from her porch. She waved like we'd been neighbors for years. I lifted my chin in a weak, automatic hello, the kind you give a stranger in the grocery store. That should have been the end of it. Except the next morning, as I was speed-walking to my car with my half-asleep toddler drooping over my shoulder, I heard her call out, "Rough morning." I didn't even look up. That obvious. She laughed softly. Only because I've had a few myself. I managed a small smile, buckled my son in, and drove off. But her voice stuck with me. Not because of what she said, but how she said it, like she wasn't judging, like she understood. Days passed. Then weeks. We kept bumping into each other in the little cracks of our routines, me dragging groceries in, her watering her plants, me chasing my son down the sidewalk, her loading furniture into her house. Every time, she'd smile or ask how I was doing, and I'd give the same short, polite answer. I didn't want to get close to anyone. I was still licking my wounds. But she didn't push. She just stayed present, like a gentle background song. One Saturday morning, my son had a meltdown in the yard. The kind where the whole world stops spinning, and all that exists is a 3-year-old screaming like the universe personally wronged him. I had cleaned up a spilled juice box, stepped on a toy truck barefoot, and was running on 4 hours of sleep. I finally sat on the grass, put my head in my hands, and tried not to cry right there in the yard. That's when I heard footsteps. "Hey," Emily said softly. "Everything okay?" I didn't look up. "Yeah. Just parenthood. Want some help?" "No," I said too quickly. I've got it." She didn't leave. Instead, she sat down in the grass next to me, close enough to feel her presence but far enough not to intrude. My son's cries slowed. He looked at her, sniffled, and climbed into my lap for comfort. "You're doing a good job," she said. I almost laughed. "Doesn't feel like it." "Good parents never think they're doing enough," she said. "But trust me, your son feels safe. I can see it." That's when something cracked, not a breakdown, but a hairline fracture in the wall I'd built around myself. Over the next few weeks, little things started happening. I'd find an extra bag of oranges hanging on my door with a sticky note that read, "Got too many, please take some." When my mower broke, she let me borrow hers before I even asked. She'd wave to my son and he'd wave back like she was an old friend. But the moment that changed everything happened one quiet afternoon. I had spent the day trying to fix a cabinet door in the kitchen. My son was napping. The house was finally still. I walked out onto the porch to breathe, rubbing the paint off my hands, when I saw Emily painting her fence, the same fence she'd been working on since the day I first noticed her. She was focused, hair tied up, cheeks smudged with paint. I didn't realize I was staring until she glanced over. That's when she said it. With a grin that was more playful than anything else, she called out, "If you want to look, just ask." I froze. My face heated. I threw my hands up. I didn't, I'm sorry. She laughed, a real, full laugh that echoed across the yard. Relax. I'm just teasing you. But something shifted in her tone. This wasn't about attraction or flirting. She wasn't calling me out. She was inviting me in. Telling me I didn't have to live on an island. That it was okay to be seen. She wiped her hands on her jeans and walked a little closer to the property line. "You know," she said, "you don't have to do everything alone." "I do, actually," I said quietly. "That's kind of my life now." She shook her head gently. "No. That's just what you've gotten used to." I didn't know how to respond, so I didn't. But her words stuck like glue. Later that week, during a rainstorm, my power went out. My son panicked. He hated the dark. I was trying to calm him down when there was a knock on the door. Emily stood there holding a lantern. "Hey," she said. "Saw your lights go off. I brought this. You guys okay?" I didn't even hide my exhaustion. "Not really," I admitted. She stepped aside. "Come to my place until your power comes back." I made soup. Normally I would have declined. Normally I would have retreated into my pride. But my son tugged on my sleeve and whispered, "Daddy, go to Miss Emmy's." So we went. That evening, in her warm living room, with my son giggling at her dog and a bowl of hot soup in front of me, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not romance. Not desire. Not even friendship. Safety. Someone saw I was struggling and stepped in, not to fix my life, but to sit beside me in the mess. That night marked the beginning of a slow thaw. We talked more. We shared little pieces of our pasts, our worries, our hopes. She told me she had moved there after a messy breakup and wanted a fresh start. I told her about my failed marriage, about feeling like I wasn't enough. She didn't judge. She just listened. Weeks turned into months. My son grew attached to her. I grew attached to the peace her presence offered. Not dependence, just the warm understanding that I wasn't alone anymore. One evening, as we watched my son toss pebbles into a puddle, she nudged my shoulder lightly. "You know," she said, "people aren't meant to do life alone. It's okay to lean sometimes." I swallowed hard. "I'm trying to learn that." She smiled. "You're doing better than you think." Kindness had found its way into my life not as a grand gesture, but as a slow, steady drip. A neighbor taking time to see me. To speak gently. To help without making me feel weak. And that changed everything. Today, 2 years later, Emily is still my neighbor, still my friend, still the person who reminds me, without ever saying it, that kindness is never wasted. My son calls her Auntie Emmy, and she beams every time. She didn't rescue me. She didn't fix my problems. She simply showed up, again and again, offering small kindnesses that added up to something powerful. Sometimes the greatest acts of kindness aren't dramatic or grand. They're just steady. Quiet. Faithful. And sometimes, all someone needs to begin healing is a neighbor who says, "If you want to look, just ask," and opens the door not to romance, but to connection, reminding them that they're not invisible. If you take anything from my story, let it be this: kindness doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real. And you, the person watching this right now, you have no idea how your small gesture might become someone else's turning point. Go out there. Offer kindness freely. You might be the reason someone finally feels seen.